A stunning series of events over the weekend. In international headlines, the U.S. military attacked Venezuela, detaining the country's leader as well as his wife. Locally, a large protest convened downtown and outside the U.S. Embassy. Organizers say they stand with the people of Venezuela in defense of their sovereignty. But some Venezuelans in the capital are cautiously optimistic about U.S. intervention in their home country. For more on this story and what we saw unfold over the weekend, let's bring in David Fraser. He is a military analyst for CTV News. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Melissa. Good to be with you.
Okay, let's first talk about your reaction onto what happened in Venezuela over the weekend.
Well, it was truly surprising, and Trump 2.0 unplugged has certainly moved up to a level none of us would have ever considered. Based on the fact that he talked about his disagreement with foreign interference. And what does he do? He goes and abducts a country leader and his wife. So that is truly stunning. The military operation that took place was absolutely flawless in its planning and execution. And you've got to give Americans credit for that. But the real question is what happens today and every day afterwards for Venezuela and for the United States. Those are the big questions. The hard part is behind us. The really complicated stuff is ahead of us.
So the U.S. says it will run Venezuela for now. What do we think we'll see when it comes to the management of the country?
Well, another great question, because, for a couple of days now, those questions have been posed to the Secretary of State, to the President, and they've yet to come up with any issues, any details, including, the Vice President who was just sworn in today in Venezuela. Even they're probably wondering the same question, because they've been told, as long as you cooperate, bad things won't happen to you. But it really is undetermined how this is going to happen when you don't have boots on the ground. And secondly is, how are the oil companies going to play into this? And they've been mute on this too. So the United States has got a lot of questions after the president announced that they were going to do it.
So what are some of the long-term potential consequences we could see because of all of this?
Well, this all goes back to, Trump's fascination with the Monroe Doctrine, where in fact it's about Western Hemisphere, dominance. He said that, when he was getting elected. He's also alluded that he wanted to take Greenland. We saw the tweet out from the Deputy Chief of Staff's wife. This really speaks to where does Trump sees, American influence. And it's less about drugs and it's more about resources. As the president said, resources are tied to national security. So we got to see what happens with the Monroe Doctrine and what he does to places like Colombia, Cuba, Greenland, and other countries that he doesn't like.
Let's talk a little bit as well about Congress and the Senate. They're saying they weren't involved in this decision-making process. So what do you kind of think about all of that?
Well, if I was an American, I'd be wondering what happened to the Constitution, the separation of powers, the balance, and the checks and balances and whatnot. Because in this particular case, and Rubio made a big point of it, U.S. has not declared war on Venezuela because that's a congressional responsibility. The Congress weren't even informed about this at all. So again, their whole democracy and their constitution seems to be put off into the side while Trump and the White House decides what happens to the country. So, Congress is going to start yelling, but fundamentally, since Trump has taken over, they've been absolutely irrelevant to the running of this country.
Let's go back to today. Maduro is expected to appear in court and the U.S. What else will we be monitoring today and throughout the rest of the week?
Well, now the legal battle begins. Does the United States have the legal right to do this? And, on the Department of Justice, who have brought these criminal charges against Maduro and his wife, and they're long-standing charges, it'll be up to them to prove that how they've gone about taking them is legal. So we'll be seeing what the defense side, uses as their opening arguments of, how do you abduct a leader from their own country, and how can that be, deemed as legal? So we'll be looking for that, looking for what other people are going to be, arrested and indicted for this, because, you've taken out the despot at the top, but the government, the apparatus for Maduro is still in place. So the question is, how does that all play out too? So there's going to be happening in two courts here. One is in Venezuela, and one is in New York. So it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds this week. It's going to be an exciting week.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, David, for joining us today.
Melissa, thank you.